Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our Great Catholic Parishes webinar, Engaging Youth and Families in Service. I'm John Poitevin. I'm the founder of Great Catholic Parishes, and I'm so glad that you're here. We do this every month. Later in the webinar, I'm going to be asking you to share your ideas about what you'd like to see us cover next. You can always just email me, John at Great Catholic Parishes, if you have an idea for a webinar, something that you're curious about, something that you've learned about that you'd like to share with others. I would love to hear about that. So that said, I want to get into why we're doing this webinar, engaging youth and families in service. Why is that important? I want to share three reasons before we get into this conversation with our panelists. The first one is that acts of service and corporal acts of mercy are integral to what it means to be Catholic. It is a foundational part of who we are. Historically, it's what we've been known for. I mean, there are Catholic charities, and there's refugee services, and there's hospitals, and there's all kinds of ways that we have reached out around the world. I mean, Mother Teresa, perhaps one of the most famous people in history for loving and serving and caring for people in need. Secondly, service is evangelistic. When people see a parish doing good things in the community, I mean, for lack of a better term, it's good PR. It's attractive. And for all the bad PR that is out there, what if we could do something that's historically who we are? It's what we're called to do. And it causes the community to look at us and say, you're valuable, you're helpful, you care beyond yourselves. I like this saying that good works build goodwill, which opens hearts to the good news. I'll say that again. Good works build goodwill, which opens hearts to the good news. And I've seen it time and time again, especially in organizations outside of the church and the community, where people say, they start to say, you know, those people from that one church, they're just so helpful and kind. They're always there when we have a need. And I know a lot of parishes that are known for this in their communities that are doing great stuff out there. But I hope that those of you, maybe it's fallen away, maybe after COVID, those ministries have not been as active, really think about getting those things going again. Um, the third reason is that engaging people in service to others is transformational in their lives. We've seen this, that once people start looking outside of themselves, start serving and helping others, they grow in gratitude, they grow in empathy, they grow in a bigger understanding of the world, which we're going to talk about later, specifically with youth. And it people today are hungry for a greater sense of purpose. And what if the local parish is where they could discover that? Something that's really stood out to me in that vein over the years is the research by a lady named Diana Garland. The book, I know this is going to be a little fuzzy, is Family Ministry, A Comprehensive Guide. I know that's terrible. Family Ministry, A Comprehensive Guide. I'll put a link to it in the chat, but Family Ministry, A Comprehensive Guide by Diana Garland. And, you know, the old statistics, they're even worse now, but the old statistics were that 60% of all people who grow up in either a Protestant or a Catholic home go to college and never come back to the faith. And I think saying never come back to the faith is we don't really know that. We're not following those people throughout the rest of their lives. But now they say those statistics are higher. Well, Diana Garland researched the 40% who stay in the faith and asked them, what was your family experience? And one of the top commonalities, those people who stayed in the faith after leaving home, one of the top common experiences they had was serving with their families in any way, helping with a food pantry or a soup kitchen, or maybe even just being a greeter, helping with VBS. They engaged their faith physically. And with the regards to people wanting a deeper sense of purpose, I think families long for a deeper sense of purpose. In your sacramental prep, in your baptism prep, in your marriage prep, do you help them imagine and dream and pray about what their purpose as a family is, what their mission as a family is? I think families long to have a sense of something like that. And I'll just read a quote from Diana's book here. She says, families and their members carry responsibility not simply for themselves, but also for their piece of the community and world. and that starts with their neighborhood and their neighbors. I think all families long to have a sense of purpose beyond just themselves. Who's helping them discover that? And I hope that might be their local parish. I'll share my experience real quick in serving as a young person, young adult, and how it changed my life. Um, First of all, when I was 14, I was invited on some summer work camps, which we'll talk about later. But I went to the Appalachian Mountains and worked with some of the poorest people in North America, people that had no running water, no electricity. And I was just a teen. We took a school bus out there. We slept on the floor of a church and showered in the gym and helped these people every day work on their homes. It blew my mind. I had no idea that people in my country existed like this, but it was just a summer thing. And there'd be this high afterwards, and then it would go away. When I was 21, I had my own personal conversion experience where my life just became um, inspired and really just my faith became color. It became vibrant. It became real to me. And I went to Haiti and I went to Mexico. And again, even on a deeper scale, I worked in garbage dumps. I saw people who had nothing but yet had joy. I saw people that had my same faith, but were just worshiping with wooden benches and dirt floors. And it that's where my life really changed its course. And I thought I can never be the same again. I was wrecked for the ordinary. I joined ecumenical missions organizations for the next 5 years. I not only went to places like that, but I took teenagers to places like that in the summer times. And as you'll hear from our panelists, it just had a radical impact on their lives. Um, I would get letters from parents in September and October that would say, "What happened to my child? They're making their bed. They want to do their chores. They're asking if they can help the neighbors. They're asking if they can wash their laundry in the bathtub to conserve water. And because they have a friend in Haiti that washes, or friend in Mexico that washes their clothes by hand now." So I've seen this work in people's lives. It changed my life. And I think it changed the lives of the people that we're going to have on this webinar today. So I want to invite Stephanie and Maggie to come on. Stephanie Petticord is the president of Good Faith. Maggie Smith is the vice president. Hey, folks, so good to have you on here.
Hi, John. Thanks for having us.
Hi, John. Thank you.
We've all shared stories with each other because we've all seen this.
I was going to say, you sort of said it all in your intro. I wrote down your three things. I said, what else is there to say?
There's a lot, because I think stories are so powerful, and we can give bullet points, but when we share the real experiences, and that's how we all got here, right? We all at some point got ruined for the ordinary and realized that giving is so much more and serving is so much more fulfilling. And I think every human has that deep within them, but it sometimes it needs to be drawn out. And in today's culture, a lot of times they're not getting that. But the mission of Good Faith is to cultivate a vibrant community of faith in action through transformative experiences of missionary discipleship rooted in Catholic social tradition. And that is great. But I want to start with each of you.
Very long-winded.
No, I mean, we can work on that later. We can workshop a few things, but I think it does encapsulate. I love that you're talking about transformative experiences because it is so life-changing. But why did each of you get involved in this kind of work personally? And then we'll get into why you started Good Faith.
I think you said it. You have an experience as a high school student or an adolescent or as a young adult, and it ruins you for life, right? There's a reason Jesuit Volunteer Corps, that's their tagline, ruined for life. For me, my experience was as a high school sophomore, and my Spanish teacher put us on an airplane, convinced our parents to send us. I grew up in Massachusetts, cradle Catholic. I was going to a Catholic high school, but service was not really an integral. This was the 90s. So we could talk about how service has evolved over time and is much more prolific now than it was then. But somehow my high school Spanish teacher had an uncle who was a priest in Juarez, he convinced our parents to buy us a plane ticket, and off we went. And we landed in El Paso and got on a school bus and crossed the border into Juarez and lived with families with no background checks. There was little to no supervision. But yeah, that experience changed my life. I'm looking over the back of my my screen here, and I have a picture of myself and my high school best friend, sitting outside the church that we were building in Juarez, out next to a garbage dump. And it was just the authenticity of that experience, the eye-opening element of that experience, and just the transformational nature of, this is what we do as Catholics. Like, this is the era that I breathe. And I think that is, in the Holy Spirit's own way, how I came to be involved in 2013. And I started as a consultant and was just sort of helping the organization through a transition period. And Pope Francis was newly elected, and he was saying like striking all the notes. I think I was at a point in my faith where I said, I don't know. I don't feel a home for me in my parish anymore. I'm now raising children in this faith, and I'm here, I'm going through the motions, but it's not exciting me. I don't feel my call. And then I started my work here, and I said, there's something to this organization and to this work. And I agreed to an interim role as their president. And here I am many, many, many years later, ruined, ruined for life.
Yeah.
And this is really quite happily become my life's work. So
Yeah, that was the idea that I actually can do this as a job was like such a mind blowing. I get to do this. Like,
I get to do this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And before we jump to Maggie, I want to share another thought that I had. And this is like, I don't want to go too deep down this rabbit hole, but science actually proves what we're saying to be true regarding actions and faith connected together. So modern therapists will have you do physical motions with your body, somatic work, tied with your psychological therapy, because they have found that when you do something physical along with something more existential, it actually creates neuropathways that actually meld that into your mind and your heart. And that's the scientific side of this thing, is that as people are serving and doing what they're called to do and created to do and what our faith says, there's actually a science behind why it deepens our faith as well. That's fascinating to me. But
something really tangibly, physiologically is happening
yeah,
within us. And I think there's really something to be said about that. As someone who, I'm a very type A person, I have a really hard time shutting off my brain. So some of my favorite vacation experiences are on service immersion, because it fully immerses me in something outside of my usual everyday comfort zone. And you can feel the movement of the Spirit working within you. And we see it all the time with young people, especially as they disconnect from their technology. They disconnect from their lives back home, and they're fully immersed, body, mind, spirit, in something totally unique and extraordinary. It's a great gift to be able to see it.
Well, Maggie, you didn't jump in as interim vice president. You jumped in as a participant, right?
Yeah.
As a youth. And
Yes.
so tell us about that.
Sure. Yeah, I was gonna say I've been here at Good Faith professionally for 8 years, but I first was introduced to the work of the Center for Faith Justice. That was the organizational name at the time. To the works programs. I liked your quote, John, earlier about good works lead to goodwill, lead to good. I don't remember the rest. I'm so sorry. But the back of our t-shirts, our scripture tagline was from James 2:26, faith without works is dead. And so is he gonna put the quote?
I'm putting it in the chat for you.
Chat. Good, thank you. Yeah, as a high school student, I actually went on our program called Justice Works. That was a chance to immerse myself in the city of Philadelphia. I live in New Jersey, not far from Philadelphia. And my high school youth ministry, someone from CFJ came down and invited us to come on this immersion experience. And I had a heart for service. I went to Catholic high school. Unlike Stephanie's experience, we had service requirements at my high school. So we all had to meet them. But I remember feeling really drawn to it and called to it, not so much because I had to check a box, but because maybe it's that thing you're talking about, the neuro pathways, the feel good, do good. Something was calling me and compelling me. Probably had to do with like how my mom raised us as well. So all these factors. And I went on this immersion experience and I learned about Catholic social teaching, which pretty positive I learned in school too. I think we had like a semester on CST, but it was like, oh, this is what it means to actually put this into practice. Okay, there's these principles, and now we're talking about how us doing these serving in the community, but also the call to do justice is like deeply part of our faith. And now I cannot separate the two. For me, a faith that does justice, a faith that does service, I can't unlink them. When my husband asked me, like, what do you think your next call is after good faith? I'm like, I can't go anywhere where my faith, not that I have a call after good faith, but
I was just going to jump in and say
I can't
there is no
go.
call after good faith, Maggie.
He's like, have you ever, like, have you thought about, when he asked me that, I'm like, I can't separate. I literally just got on my soapbox about not being able to separate my faith from this call for justice and the work.
It's almost like there's a scripture that says faith without works is dead. Wouldn't it be awesome if there was a scripture that actually said that?
I should have put my work shirt on today. I should have thrown it on, and then like just you let you see the back of me. But yeah, I went on to do our young adult leadership program as well between my junior and senior year of college. That program was called LeaderWorks. These were just like deeply transformative experiences for me. And I don't just say that because like, oh, that's a nice tagline or something. They really did. It made me if I finally found, like, the best way I can describe it is I found my people, like I found people who cared about their faith. I found other people who were practicing their Catholic faith by doing this service and justice work. And it just felt so right. It felt like such a fit. And then I decided to go on and study theology and pastoral ministry in grad school and just dove more into that and found my way back to CFJ at the time, now Good Faith, after I graduated from grad school in a professional capacity. And again, I'll say it felt right. It just a place that was really impactful and formative for me as a young person could be where I grow my professional career and like live into my calling, my vocation. So the idea of being able to serve, the idea of being able to encounter our neighbors, the idea of we have not only this call to serve those around us, but also to work for justice, to change the very systems around us, to be more equitable, like really just to live into the gospel call, like to constantly lean on what Jesus is trying to teach us and show us and exemplify for us in the gospels. Yeah, the fact that I could do that in a professional setting and live into that has been exciting. It's why I'm still here almost 8 years later.
And I think whether people go into it full-time vocationally or not, it changes the way they live and work and see the world. Their neighbors, the person on the corner, the refugee. There's a organization, a national organization that has a Dallas branch here called Conscious Capitalism, that just business people see how they do business differently.
Yeah.
In light
We
of
talk about that all the time, John. Like we did our first research study at Good Faith. We reached back out to the alumni, all of these former middle school and high school young adults who came through the works programs. Most of them are not working in professional ministry or nonprofit sector. But we were like, what are you doing? How are you living your faith values in your work? You can incorporate this in the business world. You can serve on boards, you can volunteer your time, or you can wind up in a nonprofit or justice-based or service-based organization, social services. I mean, so we had a vast range of people taking the influence, how they were formed and inspired and transformed.
And I think one of the things that we really picked up on in that 2018 study, which we did aligned with our 10th official year of service as an organization, our 10th anniversary, was that it really did lead to longitudinal faith practice. Part of the conversation that was happening then, that was the year of the Synod on Youth and Vocational Discernment, convened by Pope Francis, convened in part because the data were telling us that we have a problem. Like, we were hemorrhaging young people as a church, and starting to unpack the why and the how, and then what can we do differently. And just sort of anecdotally, through people like Maggie, I started to talk to our young adults and say, tell me where you are in your faith journey, and did this shape you, and did it change you, and how so? So when we did that study, we looked at longitudinal faith markers of faith practice, and a vast majority were still belong to a parish. I mean, we had these data points that were completely counter narrative to what was happening at the national level. And I said, well, we clearly have a story to tell here. Affirmed by the book that you shared earlier, and other studies that said service makes a difference. And it's not something that we should be doing as a throwaway to put on college applications. This is something that is real and tangible, and incidentally, an integral part of who we are as Catholics in the world. So why are we not leaning into that with greater intentionality as a church? So that has really become our focus over these last, I would say, really 6 to 7 years in particular.
One of my least favorite, it's become a least favorite line of mine that's you sometimes hear, I guess I hear it a little bit less now, is the best kept secret of the Catholic Church is Catholic social teaching. And I'm like, why is it a secret? This should not, this is so very, very important.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah,
Yeah, if people get anything out of this, I mean, just one, it's what we're called to do. We should be doing it regardless of the results. Even if it meant we didn't get the results that we want as far as attendance, we're called to do it. Obedience is not about results. Obedience is about obedience. But the results are everything that you're saying. So as people are like wringing their hands, how are we going to get the youth more involved and young families, and how are we going to bring them back? Maybe we need to create an app for our parish. That'll do it. Maybe we need to send out email blasts. None of that is going to bring them back. I'm just telling you. People will sell you those programs and they'll make money off of it, but it's not going to transform your parish. But I tell you what will, is exactly what we're talking about, because the three, I think, highest longings that I see in millennials especially are authenticity, community, and purpose. And all of that is experienced in service. And so who is really showing them that? Well, businesses are trying to. I actually was talking to somebody the other day, and their company gives them paid volunteer hours to serve in the community, secular company, because the business knows that millennials want this from their employer. They also do matching funds for giving to nonprofits. They're doing all the things that we're called to do, but they're doing it just to keep employees. So what if we did it because we're called to do it? I think you would see all the research shows, the anecdotal stories tell the story, but it works. I'll get off my soapbox now. Tell me.
But John, you're right. People are hungry.
Yeah.
And I want to say now there's a time such as this right now. People are hungry for what can we do? Maybe in a time when it feels like so much is being stripped away or taken away or uncertainty, I think people really are like, what can we do? So yeah.
I think we'll circle back to this, John, but one of the dynamics that I think is really important, you touched upon the millennial. So Maggie's our unicorn millennial in front of us right now, but these are the young parents, these are the young families. I'm slightly older than a millennial. So my kids skew a little bit older, but these are the people that are in front of us present day, who, as you said, are yearning for meaning and purpose. What I will say is that a lot of our work has been on mentorship and accompaniment, and in accompanying young people and finding people within your parish community who are not your paid ministry staff. Who are the people in your pews? And we all have them. Who are the people within your pews that are also searching for meaning and purpose? And what we found in retirees, our oldest mentor in our last initiative was 82. And she would find meaning and purpose in accompanying young people. So helping them, the number of them that said, we're asking our kids all these questions about what are your gifts? What are the needs of the world? Where do those two intersect and connect? And they said, I've never been asked this. I'm a lifelong Catholic. I'm here every Sunday. I've never asked myself, and nobody's ever invited me into that space of reflection about who am I called to be in the world. So as we're having this conversation about young people and families, let us not forget the older generation within our pews. There was a 2019 Gallup poll pre-COVID, before the pandemic, that 2/3 of practicing adult Catholics in the pews couldn't identify why they were still there. 2/3 of practicing adult Catholics. So these are not the hemorrhaged young people. These are not the folks that have already left. These are the people that are there who we would sort of identify as religiously ambivalent because they don't have a purpose in their faith journey. They've lost sort of their navigational beacon. And what we have found is that service is the conduit. It's the tether. It's the way back in.
That intergenerational connection piece there has been so important in the work that we've done. I would say we always had adults who accompanied our young people on service. And in the next level work that we've been doing really specifically, intentionally over the last 6 years, has formed that youth and mentor relationship. And so much comes from their ability to share in something together and then the relationship that they form. And that sharing in something together is oriented around service and justice in their communities. So it's been a profound, we keep saying transformative, but it's true, profoundly transformative.
I'm so glad you added that piece of the intergenerational part of it, because it is true that everyone is looking for purpose, and later in life, people can't contribute the way that they used to. So how can they contribute? And so much of their lifelong wisdom and experience and knowledge is such a valuable way for them to be a part and connect with younger people that may not have that kind of person in their life. And so they both really benefit from it. Before we get back to talking about the programs that you offer, we're going to talk to Bree Benavidez at St. Ignatius of Loyola in Spring, Texas. Here's my fellow Texan. Bree, are you millennial or Gen Z or in between? Where are you?
I am a dead center millennial. I was born in 1991, so there's no getting around.
I can't believe you didn't ask me which one I was, John. This already feels very ageist and very.
Me and Bree are the squarely millennial, and I love it. I'm here for it. That's what I always say. I'm right there.
Stephanie, you already acknowledged that you were not. And hey, Gen Xers, we paved the way for you guys. We were the bridge generation that really paved the way for millennials. That I want to do a quick quiz. So I want to ask everybody watching to get ready to respond to this. I want to know what you think we should do for our next webinar. While that's happening, I'll just remind you that, hey, I would love to help your parish. I love doing workshops with, especially with staff, volunteer leaders, parishioners on discipleship, on growing in faith, on growing our volunteers and how we can really shift our volunteer culture, one that is like vibrant and thriving, where we have the volunteers that we need. I always say we don't have a volunteer problem. We don't have a stewardship problem. We have a discipleship problem. And when we focus on accompanying people in their faith, those other things seem to happen. But I have a lot of tools for that I help parishes with, and also do one-on-one leadership coaching. So if you are a pastor or a parish leader and you'd like help in that, a lot of times we feel kind of alone in our situation. Love to talk to you about accompanying you and coaching you in that. And lastly, I'll say I've got an upcoming cohort of 6 or 7 parishes in the New York, New Jersey area. And if you are a parish leader there and you'd like for your team to be a part of that, that's where I bring, about 6 or 7 or 8 parish teams together. That's a pastor and 4 or 5 staff or volunteer leaders. And we get together in a cohort of those groups and we learn together. We evaluate what we're doing, what our outcomes are. We dream, we learn best practices, and then we create strategic plans around that. So if you feel like your parish needs a little something to move from good to great and to really get you going, that's a great way to do it. I love the cohort experience. Bree, for transparency, I'm working with St. Ignatius of Loyola for the next 9 months with Father Norbert and Ron and the team there on this area of lifelong faith formation. And Bree works with the youths
Youth.
there at St. Ignatius of Loyola. And I love the tagline of your parish, a people for others. We exist for those outside of the pews. We exist for the community. We exist for more than just ourselves. And isn't that who we're called to be as the church? Share with us what you're doing, engaging youth in service, and what you're seeing in the lives of young people as they get involved.
Yeah, I would be remiss to not mention that our parish specifically, because we're people for others, we try to incorporate service in all levels of formation. So, we have obviously our youth formation, or our youth service, which I'll hit, but we also do family mission that invites families with elementary youth out to, the border of Texas to a small town to be able to serve at that parish, our mission really. And we also here on a parish level help support a school in Guatemala. And in the summer we invite our old, our non-youth parishioners to attend that mission trip to actually go and visit the school and see the young people that the teachers are teaching. And so that really helps to hit anyone who's not in faith formation as a young person who's under 18. And so I think those two wings on the end of what we do in youth ministry is really important, because it shows like this is not just something like I loved what Stephanie and Maggie were saying earlier, is it's not just something you do to put on a college application. This is part of inherently who we are as Catholics. And so for us, what I see in our young people, and I work with middle school and high school youth, and so our high schoolers get an opportunity in the summer to go on a week-long service trip where we pick a different city. We take, 50 youth on a bus and drive 11, 12 hours to a site, and we stay on air mattresses in a school, and we get an opportunity to serve that local community. And I think what I've seen in my young people is not only does it help them like recognize where they are personally, but it helps them build community with other people, and it helps them see that like the things that they're doing are not just to do them. Like there's a true impact that they get to witness and be a part of, and actually speaking to the people that they're serving. And I think that impact, Maggie mentioned it, Stephanie mentioned it, I've had personal experiences like that too, and it just shapes and changes how you encounter the world. And you see that when they come back to the parish, is there's a deep longing and desire to serve. And granted, yeah, there's youth who already inherently have that, but to see it in young people who like never in a million years would I have been like, that person's gonna, is coming back on fire in that way. And so it's just a beautiful example of truly being a disciple, that road to Emmaus of like sharing the gospel, but not just in words, but in how they love through those actions. So it's
And
epic.
I know it's important to you to help them connect their service with their heart.
Mhm.
What are some ways that you intentionally do that?
Yeah, I think, you and I have spoken about this. I think language is really important when it comes to our young people, and even just how we encounter them. I never call teenagers kids. because as a teenager, I hated being called a kid, you know, and that transfers into how we speak about service. And because the world already offers them service, service is not exclusive to the church. And so it's, again, it's that how many hours can I get so that I fulfill Key Club or NHS, which are all good things, but to orient it in a way that is applicable to faith, that they connect that to their faith. And so even changing the language of like not calling it service, calling it works of mercy, because that's literally what we're doing. We're doing the corporal and spiritual works of mercy. And so helping them say like, not only are you already doing these things in your everyday life and not recognizing that they're inherently part of your faith, part of being Catholic, but that it helps you grow in faith and represent the faith. And it's not, again, it's not just a thing we do, but it's part of our inherent nature as Catholics. So that language shift, I think, is really important for me.
I think that's you. I think language is so powerful, and they're not going to hear works of mercy anywhere else that they volunteer, right? And when they hear it from you, they go, "Oh, that is what I'm doing." You mentioned like helping them identify how they're already doing that in their life.
Mhm.
Give me an example of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I look at the spiritual works of mercy because I think a lot of times in service we focus more on the corporal works of mercy. Again, really good to focus on, but even the spiritual works of mercy, like teaching the ignorant, like instructing the ignorant, and that sounds really bad sometimes to teens. Like, what do you mean? But it's just literally sharing their faith. Like, I have young people, we're in the Bible Belt, and so we're surrounded by a lot of non-Catholic churches, and they have friends who maybe don't understand Catholic social teaching, and our youth are learning it, but to be able to speak that out to other people is a spiritual work of mercy. And so telling them, like, you telling your and having that conversation with your friends that we don't worship Mary, that's a spiritual work of mercy. Like, you're helping them understand something that they didn't before. Consoling and being there for their friends, another spiritual work of mercy. In the corporal works of mercy, it's offering, they already do this. They're donating at school. They're doing the hours already. So many of my youth are so actively participating in other service outside of the parish for those things, and helping them to connect that and being like, hey, actually, this falls under this. So, like, not only are you just being a really good person, but you're being a really good Catholic.
Mm, that's great. You know, I think I experienced what kind of some of what you've experienced, Bree, when I was a teen and would go do this thing in the summer and then not really know how to incorporate it in my life the rest of the year. And teaching your students and your youth, hey, when you help them out with some lunch money, or they need a ride somewhere, or when you're there for them, this is a part of your faith. It's not just something you're doing. I think that's so important. That's so great. I'd like to I know Stephanie and Maggie, years ago you guys recognized we don't just want to do this in the summers. We need something the other 9 months of the year, which kind of led to some new programs that you created there. Tell us about the programs that you're doing, and how people can get involved in them.
Yeah, and I loved what Bree was just saying about how do we integrate this and how do you affirm? So many of our young people are already doing this in their lives, but affirming for them, this is the language, this is the articulation of, oh, I'm not doing this because I'm a nice person. I'm doing this because I'm a Catholic called to be a servant to the world and with the world. So it's a very, empowering them with the language and the skill set to see and acknowledge the movement of the Holy Spirit, and then deploy that in every aspect of their life is really powerful. Yeah. Several years ago, we mentioned that we did a study in 2018, and then shortly thereafter, we crafted a new initiative, which is called Next Level, really commensurate with the vision of Pope Francis, and what we knew from our own research and our own data, which was the seeds of what the transformative seeds that are planted through a 1 week immersion experience. If we as parishes and high schools and parents can figure out how do we pour fertilizer on organic fertilizer on that and like nurture that seed so that it grows and it takes deep root so that it stays with that young person over the arc of a lifetime. What we heard so many times was from young people who went on our 1 week immersions, I go home, I'm on fire, and the flame that's been ignited in me has fizzled because there's nothing for me in my parish. There's nothing for me to carry this out. So we created an initiative called Next Level, which really was formed based on a couple of key things. One is protagonism, that's Pope Francis's word, which is deeper than leadership. As Bree was saying, you can go to Key Club, you can go to National Honor Society. There's 100 other places that talk about youth leadership, right? As Catholics, we are called to be the hands and feet of Jesus in the world. So that is protagonism. Who are you? What's God calling you to do and be in your life? And Next Level was really forged around, we take a cohort of young people within parish context, we partner them with adult non-staff mentors. We really pushed our parishes, find people in your pews who are not your paid employees, who are willing to walk alongside your young people. And together they create passion projects that are youth-led, youth-designed, youth-initiated around things that they care about. And I think one of the things that was really important to us was that it not be transactional. And I think I see some of the questions coming in, and I love those questions around how do I integrate service with my high school students? How do I make it meaningful? And for us, it was how do we empower young people to find what they care about in the world? So it's not about forcing them to come to yet another youth group. It's not about forcing them to show up for one more thing. They do it because they're passionate about it, and it is of them and for them and with them. And they are the drivers. So when you tap into that piece of them, it becomes much less of a push and pull, and it really becomes them identifying, this is how I integrate this into my life now. And so that initiative is called Next Level. We launched that in 2019. We have this really robust research document. There's all sorts of stuff in here about, John will share that link. There's stuff in here about how you can be a hospitable parish community to honoring youth agency. There's stuff in there about what quick tips for pastors about what it is and how you can accompany young people. And those are really small steps that you can and should take, that are not insurmountable, And then we took the same body of research and we've incorporated it into a family initiative, looking at Catholic families from very young ages, pre-K, early childhood, to young adulthood, and saying, how do you take the framework of Catholic social teaching, which inherently calls us outward, right? But how do you take those same tenets and deploy them within your own domestic church? How do you deploy those within your own household? And it is, Bree, as you were talking, I said, this is what we're trying to do with families. It is how you relate to one another. It is how you're in right relationship with one another as a family. And Mother Teresa said, if you want to create peace in the world, go home and love your family. Start with those immediately around you. And to the extent that we model that with our children from very young ages, how we manage conflict as a family, this is how we do that through the lens of our Catholic faith. How we navigate tough decisions and family discernment. How do we do that through the lens of our Catholic faith? Our Catholic faith gives us the framework, not for just how we go out and serve once a week, but it gives us the framework by which we live our lives through this lens. So that's an initiative that we're piloting. It's all experimental at this point, but we're really very excited, partially because we know the power of it through our research in Next Level. We know that it works really effectively for young people and adults. And our early data out of the family initiative are really exciting as well.
I wanted to add there really quickly. This is also in response to one of the questions I saw come in about what you can do with young families, especially outside of food pantries or mission trips, because those might not feel, well, one, like you can actually bring your small children to them, which we understand. Yeah, like a week-long mission experience is awesome at certain points in our life, but not always possible at other points. One of the things we're doing with our families right now during the season of Lent is exploring this idea of service and justice through the corporal works of mercy. So we've designed activities that they can work on every few weeks as a family, oriented around feeding the hungry, around clothing the naked, sheltering the homeless, like um, without going too much detail, we've created these like kits that you can make at home with your family where your little ones can design cards. We'll be writing letters for jail ministry where your little ones can write letters to inmates. Like, so there's ways to talk about, incorporate the practices in our families. And we're really excited to bring those to life through Family Matters is the name of that.
And those
family.
are designed to be integrated into their everyday life. I think one of our challenges with all of our Catholic families, and I am in the thick of this, so I am lumping myself as a Catholic family who is trying to figure this out in the midst of raising adolescents who play multiple and often competing travel sports. And we have something 7 days of the week, oftentimes multiple things on all 7 days. So how do you integrate this into your everyday life in a way that that makes sense and is real and manageable and tangible and that will stick longitudinally, is really the emphasis.
Yeah. So I also wanted to just pick up to say, like, I think one of the best things that you can do as people are asking about service activities, looking up local, if you've not started anything, if your parish has no connections to local organizations, it's starting to look for those local food pantries and soup kitchens and nursing homes and places like the food community gardens, like getting outside, or looking up local nonprofits that have volunteer needs, where you can organize for your young, if you're a youth group or the young people that you minister to, or intergenerational ministries, to go out and serve together, starting. Maybe there's an after school tutoring program. Maybe there's a Saturday you can spend at the local community garden, starting there. But I would also say, and Bree was getting at this, and it's really been integral to our programs, is you can't just leave it at the service. You have to reflect on, you have to make the connection to our faith. So that can be something as simple as, before you're going out to serve, how are you starting your time together in prayer? How are you inviting God into that space? We're being really reflective on, okay, God, how am I going to share my gifts that you've given me with the community? How can I go here with an open heart? How can I see people in their full dignity? And then afterward, it's that deeper reflection. Like, what does this have to do with the gospel? What does this have to do with Catholic social teaching, with the corporal works and spiritual works of mercy? Just really being able, not just leaving service at service. Again, that's what makes it not Key Club or National Honor Society, is that you're connecting it really obviously and in discussion and reflection. That's what all of our immersion experiences at Good Faith, that's what Next Level incorporates Family Matters as well, is that we can't just leave those practices there. Okay, cool, you did something good in your community, awesome. It can't just stay there. You have to have the deeper connection there. And for some parishes, connecting into your liturgical life as well. How do you commission and pray for the groups that are going out on mission experiences, or your young people who are going to serve, or something like that? Yeah, so making those really intentional connections there is a difference maker, and one yeah, I think you really have to do, not just
Yeah.
like, oh, it would make it better. I think it's something you really have to do.
The reflection piece is so powerful for any volunteer service time. And you don't need a curriculum for this. You really just need to circle people up, or just have them circle up in groups of 3 or 4 and just give them a question. Hey, how did you see God work in or through you today? Jesus said, whenever we serve the least of these, that we're caring for him. Where did you see Jesus today? This, you can do this with greeters after mass. You can do this with Knights of Columbus. You can do this with anybody, and it connects our service to our faith, and it helps us internalize it and process it in a way that makes it real. So I'm so glad you mentioned that. And again, it's not complicated. It really is just taking a moment to do it. It may be uncomfortable at first. If you're a parish where people don't feel comfortable doing that, I'll just warn you, it's going to be uncomfortable. But you do it for 2 months and suddenly it's normal. It's
Yeah.
consistency of doing it too that's so important.
But John, people are looking for connection. I will say, like we hear that time and time again, even in that discomfort at first of people really are looking for the opportunity to talk to each other
Mm,
and to share that experience that they had, right? If they were out at let's say you're at a food pantry and you get to walk with the shoppers, the guests, the clients there, and you meet them, you learn a name. Like our young people, we would always set them out with the goal of learn someone's name today when you go out to service. And our hope was always that we always really tried to create encounter experiences, place where you were going to build relationship with at least another person present. That practice of really like seeing Jesus in each other. But we'd say, like, look them in the eye, learn their name. Like, it's not actually maybe as basic when I was maybe once felt, but it's a simple practice, right? Where you can go out and learn your name. Eventually, the kids would just like grab onto this. It was their goal to learn names so that they could come back and share with each other who they met. And then our kids often switch service sites on some of our programs. So then the next day, the next group was like, okay, we've heard a lot about Tim. We want to go meet Tim tomorrow when we go back to here because we heard the other kids talking about how funny, nice, cool Tim was. I was like, it could come across as a silly example, but it's true that I'm giving them the space to share who they met, what challenged them, what brought them joy, and how they felt like maybe they did something or they contributed or they participated in it. I think people are hungry for those connections. They just need people to make the way for them to
yeah.
build them. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other thing that does, I love you talk about the name thing because it humanizes the
Mm,
people that you're serving.
yeah.
So often there can be this disconnect. Like I'm the server here. I'm the person doing, you're the recipient, and there's not even a human connection. And when you learn people's names and you call them by name, it breaks through that immediately. I even think about like this is kind of silly, but I'm a part of it. I go to play trivia on Tuesday nights, and we have this group that we all do it, and we always have this same server. I'd probably been going for 6 weeks, and I was like, "What is her name? How do I not know her name?"
Mm.
And I got her name. Her name's Melody, and we start talking, and she starts sharing that her mom's been teaching kindergarten for 40 years, and like there was a teacher at our table, and learning someone's name and incorporating that into service. There's a book I'm going to put here in the chat because we could do a whole other webinar on the fact that there's healthy and unhealthy ways to serve.
Yeah.
And there's a great book called When Helping Hurts that I'm
Mm.
putting there. It doesn't say that, it just has the link, but I'll add it.
That's
When Helping Hurts is a great resource, and they even have videos that you can use to help train people in serving on how to do it from a more honoring way that doesn't steal people's dignity
right.
when you're serving them. I think that's an incredibly important part for us to teach people.
Yeah, yeah. And it is a teaching thing, John. It's not, and I'm so glad that you named that because it's not something that is intuitive. We hear the word serve and it's like, I'm going to serve for. And a huge piece of what we do is shift the dial on that conversation to serving for to serving with. We're serving alongside. We're here to lock arms. We're here to partner with and walk with, just like Jesus in the Gospel of Emmaus. And Bree mentioned that gospel earlier. We're here to walk with, not to save. We're not saving anyone by serving, but we're here to learn and accompany and be curious and be in relationship with one another. And I think so much of what Pope Francis has done is call us into that. What are meaningful experiences of human encounter. And that's a huge piece. I know someone asked a question in the chat about experiences again across the lifespan. And the one thing I know, we know this because we've been trying to find service experiences for middle school students. Middle school for us is age 12 or 13 here in New Jersey for a long time. And there are a lot of roadblocks. So if you're a parent of a child that's less than 10, let's say, it can be difficult to find places that will even give you access. So as Maggie mentioned, a couple of those steps, but I would encourage you, do you have homes or residences or programs that work with adults with developmental disabilities? Some of our richest service experiences, and we have oodles of alumni whose lives have been shaped by, now I went into special education for my career. I went into working with a population with autism as my career because of their service experiences as a high school student that really shaped and transformed them. So those types of programs do readily allow and welcome senior homes, senior centers, nursing homes yearn for younger people to come in and sit with. And it is, how do we give our young people the language of the ministry of hospitality? Because that's a challenge, right? We have to teach them how to just be with and be in relationship with those that we're serving alongside. So yeah, I think that's a really critical piece.
I'm so glad you actually just triggered a memory that I haven't thought about in decades. In that same youth group, once a month, we went to a nursing home and we sang a few songs, and then we just went room to room to anybody that would like a visitor. And that's a very simple thing that youth of a certain age can do. We had several people say, what are ideas of things we can do? I would say this. I would say utilize your people to discover those ideas of things you can do. They probably know of community organizations that you could partner with. They probably know there's probably things that they're already interested in. So don't just come at them with these ways to get involved. Really crowdsource that from them and let them be a part of creating this. I would first build a coalition of the people that are already into this and excited about it, and then utilize them kind of as your team, and then let them reach out. And there are as many unique ways to serve and care and love people as there are people and as there are places. There, Bree, in Houston, I know that during the hurricanes, there was a parish that did a pet, they did like a pet rescue center for people that had to go into alternative housing but couldn't take their pets with them. And so how meaningful is that to someone who's not even Catholic and can't figure out what to do with their dog because they're getting put in this hotel? And we're loving and caring for those people as we care for their pets. Super creative. So I would go to your community, to your people, to find the most relevant ways to serve the people around you. We're a few minutes over, folks. I know that all of us could talk about this forever, but thank you so much for those of you watching. Thank you, panelists, for joining me today. We'll in the email that goes out tomorrow, you'll have links to all the things that we talked about and to connect with Bree or Stephanie or Maggie if you have more questions for them. So thank you for joining, everybody. Thank you guys for being a part of it.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, John.
Great. Take care. God bless.